What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. So I came out in the shop today trying to figure out what I want to work on while we're all stuck at home and while all of my customer builds are on hold. So I can't really work on the Land Rover Discovery that we have outside yet because it's currently raining and I don't really want to stand out in the rain and try and get something running. We'll just wait until we have a nice day to do that. So what I decided to do is I went out to my motorcycle storage and I started to look around at the bikes I had out there. I have probably, I don't know, 10 or so bikes. 3 or 4 of them are already kind of lined up to be those customer builds. So I mentioned in my last video, I have about 5 builds in the works that are obviously on hold at the moment. A couple of those utilize bikes that I already have. So I don't really want to start working on those bikes until the customer is ready to move forward and we lock down the design. And I just feel like if I start working on it, I may end up having to redo some work or something like that. So I decided to pick a bike that is my own personal bike. There's no customer lined up for it. I probably won't sell it when it's done. I figured it now is a good time for me to just build something for myself. So I pulled out a bike that I've owned for over a year that you guys have never seen before. We're going to be doing a unique style build to kind of fit the climate in the world right now. And I hope you guys enjoy, so let's do it. So here it is. You guys will be glad to see. Like I mentioned, it is not a classic Honda. This is a 1975. It may be 76, somewhere around there. I don't remember. Later than a 73 Triumph Bonneville T140V. So if you guys are familiar with my channel at all, you know that a couple of years ago I built a full Triumph hardtail bobber out of this exact model, but a 73, so a little bit different. My hardtail is a right foot shift. This is a more standard style left foot shift. Other than that, this has a rear disc brake where my other one is a rear drum. Most of the rest of the bike is very, very similar to that one. We are going a completely different direction with this guy. It's not going to be a bobber. We're not going to do anything like that. What I want to do for this build is kind of, I'd say apocalypse style. And I don't really want to use that word in bad taste with what's going on in the world. But what I mean by that is I want to try and build this bike utilizing parts that we have on hand. So I have tons of parts in those bins over there. My garage attic is full of motorcycle parts. I have a decent amount of Triumph parts from the hardtail build. And I want to challenge myself for a number of reasons to try and build this without spending a ton of money and without having to buy a bunch of new parts. So why I want to do that, I mean, the short, obvious reason is I don't really need to be spending a lot of money right now with, you know, a lot of my customer builds on hold. So one, just not having the money or not wanting to spend the money, but also I feel like it'll be a cool challenge to see what kind of bike we can put together, you know, kind of utilizing a little bit of a mismatch of parts. The overall theme of this bike is going to be, I don't even know how to describe it because I haven't really figured out the exact plan, but I want it to look like a bike that somebody has just enjoyed for 40 years. You know, maybe somebody bought it new in the 70s, rode it for a long time, stuff happened, they had to fix it, they had to do what they had to do to get the, you know, to ride the bike to work. It was their only mode of transportation, and I just want it to look like a bike that, you know, you're not worried about getting scratched, you're not worried about if you gotta take it off road or, you know, jump it off of a curb or something. Like, I want it to kind of look a little, not quite Mad Maxy. I don't want it to look bad. I just want it to look like a Triumph that's had a lot of fun in its life. A lot of the bikes I've built kind of go with that patina kind of vibe, but this one I want to take even to the next level of, I don't want there to be any shiny new parts on this thing. I want everything on it to look like it's been on it for a long time. And that's going to prove to be a little bit of a challenge because a lot of the parts are missing right now. So we're going to have to see what we can scrounge up. Obviously I have no exhaust system currently. I have no carbs on the bike, which I think I have a spare set of Magoonies or something like that that will fit this bike. We'll have to see what we can do. A lot of this is going to be just figuring it out as we go. So I don't know, I don't have any idea how long this project's going to take. You know, the big kind of looming cloud over this bike is the fact that unfortunately this engine is locked up. So I don't know if it's locked up because it's just been sitting and it's got some rust around the piston rings, and you know, we can throw some Marvel down the cylinders and let it sit for a day and be able to pop it free, and that's it. Or if we're going to end up needing to pull this thing apart and really do some kind of deep dive into the top end, I have absolutely no idea. This is the exact condition I bought the bike in about a year and a half ago. So to give you guys a little bit more of a close-up, you can see disc front brakes, have a caliper on here, no lines or anything like that, no master cylinder. We'll have to figure all that out, see what we have on hand. It's got sweet spikes. Look, this bike is just begging to be apocalypse style. No, we will be getting rid of the spikes. We'll probably ditch the front fender completely because it's, I don't know, I'm not a big front fender guy anyway. Fork tubes actually look to be in pretty decent shape. I'm sure the seals are shot, so we'll have to address those. Those may be something I have to buy because I doubt that I have any fork seals that are the correct size, but we'll dig through the hoard and see. We'll probably do a whole different headlight and mount setup. Definitely going to do a different style handlebar. Haven't figured that part out yet. The gas tank, this black gas tank may work for what we're doing. I kind of dig the rough vibe on it already. It's not in terrible shape. I have no idea what the inside looks like, but we may be able to evaporust it, get some, you know, Triumph logos on the side, and it might just work out the way it is. We'll have to see. The engine, like I mentioned, locked up. It does have a super custom oil cooler setup that I'm sure you guys will be sad to see that go. Let's see, what else we got? It's got some rust around it, but really it's mostly just surface rust, and I'm probably going to keep it so that it, you know, kind of sticks with our theme. We'll have to replace all these lines. The electrical system, there isn't one, so we can kind of start that from scratch and figure out if we want to just build a super simple, you know, I do want to run signals and stuff on this bike because I like to run signals on all of my bikes for safety, but we'll see if we'll probably just make a harness from scratch or scrounge around, see what we can kind of come up with for that. I'll probably switch over to a negative earth system. I don't know what year Triumph switched from positive earth to negative earth. Sometime, I don't know, I know my 73 was a positive earth, and when I put the M unit in it, I kind of put it all to traditional negative earth, which is what we're going to run on this bike because it's what I'm most comfortable with, and since we're starting from scratch anyway, it doesn't really matter. I have no idea the condition of the ignition system or anything like that, so that will be something we have to figure out. I don't even know if I have coils. I don't know. We'll have to look and see if I have any extra coils. Again, a lot of this is going to be us just figuring this stuff out as we go. This one does have a 16-inch rear wheel, which is somewhat unique. My hardtail is a 18, I believe, rear. I actually kind of wish my hardtail had this because I think a 16 on a bobber looks pretty good. But I actually may already have a 16 and a 19 tire up there. We might be able to do that. We'll have to figure it out as we go. Rear fender is completely shot, so we'll have to either chop and modify or replace, or I don't know what we'll do with that. We'll figure it out as we go. Let's see, this is an oil and frame Triumph, just like the hardtail. So this is actually the oil tank, which is why I may or may not be able to use this gas tank. It's something I had on the shelf, but this is an earlier style Triumph tank that doesn't have the center stud mount. It actually mounts in the back, which I think will be in the way of that oil cap. But I do really dig that gold color. I think it could be pretty cool. So we may or may not try that. Anything else on here? That's kind of the gist of it. This does have a rear disc, which I think is cool, but we do not have a caliper or any of the rest of the rear brake system. So that'll be something interesting. We're gonna have to see if we can dig something up that will work. Maybe we could use a modified Honda front caliper. I don't know, we're gonna have to figure it out. I don't have a chain for this bike as well, and this sprocket looks pretty thin. So that may be something we have to purchase. I'm not entirely sure yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the bin or two of Triumph stuff that I have. Let's like throw it all out on the workbench and just see what kind of parts we're starting with. So first run through my parts bins. I found 2 sets of Magunis that I think will work. I actually kind of like this set better because they have just the standard little choke lever as opposed to this, which is like a cable choke, and it's just going to overcomplicate things a little bit. And, you know, once we clean these up, if we even want to, we'll clean up the inside and make it, you know, functional, but I might keep that rough exterior to go with the overall theme. Found a little gasket set, so that's cool. That might get us a little bit down the road. This is I think a primary or whatever it's called, gasket. Some spark plugs, some other random little stuff, a little ignition that we can possibly use if I can find the key for it. If not, I think I have a few spares. Bunch of random parts in here. Got like an exhaust clamp. Should be, yeah, 2 exhaust clamps. Some extra spark plugs, some random stuff. This is all a bunch of random parts mixed in. So some of this is like CB350, some of it's Triumph. I did find 2 sets of exhaust. Look at these sweet fend exhaust clamps. Unfortunately, we are not going to be using those. This does have a hole straight through it. I could poke my finger through, so we'll probably utilize these, but most likely cut them and make our own custom exhaust routed however we want. But we got to have a running bike before we worry about that. Go ahead and pull this gas tank off. I don't think it's bolted. It's not. Take a peek in here and see what the inside looks like. Got some rust, but honestly, not terrible. Probably go ahead and fill this thing up with evapor rust and just start it soaking. Gas cap and everything looks decent. I think this tank is going to work for us. You guys can let me know what we should do as far as the paint and stuff. If we just want to keep it this rough black and ride out with that. Alrighty. Got some caps on our carbs, so ideally we don't have any spiders living in here. Yet to be determined. These exhaust boots are made out of cracked rubber and electrical tape, so that's cute. Alright, what can we do to start to get into this thing? I guess I'm just going to start pulling stuff off. Like I mentioned, I am not an expert Triumph mechanic, so just keep that in mind. I might very well do something incorrectly here. This is not a how-to video. This is a you follow along as I dig into the top end of my Triumph video. So let me grab some tools. Not to diss the Triumphs out there, but it is pretty funny going from working on Hondas to Triumphs of the same year. You can tell that the engineering on the Hondas is much better. It's just like everything is so well thought out on the Hondas. Just like adjusting chain tension, there's already little notches, and everything is just kind of as it should be, which is why they tend to be so reliable and come back to life pretty easily. These are a lot different. These are kind of look like they're just put together by a guy in his shed, and that's why there's a lot less of them on the road now, and I'm sure they produced a lot less. But I kind of like the quirkiness or the character of these classic Triumphs. And they do love to leak oil too. I don't know if there's a Triumph that is on the road, from the 70s or before that doesn't leak oil. What is this saying? Like, if your Triumph's not leaking, then it's out of oil. My hardtail is no exception to that. It does leak a fair amount from this pushrod seal up here. I would imagine this one's probably going to do the same. Moving on to the little tappet covers, or whatever we're going to call these. Now these are a 3/16 Allen. So maybe I'm completely wrong and they did use some SAE stuff, or maybe at some point in this bike's life these were replaced. I have no idea. Which I'm probably going to say quite a bit during this build, because I'm just figuring this bike out as we go. Got all the bolts and nuts off of this side. Valves don't seem like heavily mushroomed or anything. Springs and everything look to be in good shape. Little push rods seem to be doing all right. No damage found yet. Let's do this side. Both the valve covers, valve rocker assemblies, whatever you want to call them, are off. So I'm going to start to pull. I'm assuming it's these 8. There's Allen's in the middle and then these 14s on the outside. And then our head should be able to come off. And then hopefully, once that's off, we should be able to determine if there's any damage to the piston or what's causing us to be locked up. Let me figure out what size these Allens are so that I can uniformly loosen up everything at the same time. I don't think the torque settings on these are very high because none of them are super stuck in there. They all seem to be coming out pretty good. See if we're free now. Oh. Almost. Oh yeah. She's free. Okay, don't see any heavy damage or anything under here. Decent amount of carbon buildup. That's what we would expect. Ooh. This right cylinder is probably our problem. Let me show you guys. So, not sure if you can tell or not. Let me see if the flashlight will help. But that cylinder looks pretty normal. This one, pretty decent amount of rust up here. So that may prove to be interesting. Let me see if I hit the kickstart. No, it still doesn't move. Pretty good buildup. So we got to see if we can free that up somehow. I'm gonna go ahead and pull these head bolts off too. I had to grind down one of my 1/2-inch wrenches to be able to get it in on these 12-point guys down here, but that's not a big deal. Pull these guys off, and then we're gonna see. Oh man, some of these are tight. We're gonna see what we can do to try and free up that piston so we can pull this head off. I am going to have to break our apocalypse rule early and order a hone, because that cylinder definitely needs to be honed out. I mean, truthfully, it probably needs to be machined, but for the sake of the build, we're going to try and get away with just a hone. But I want to get it out and make sure it's not heavily scored and, you know, kind of unusable. I don't think it is. It just looks like some light surface rust that I would prefer to clean up, but I also want to make sure we don't have any broken piston rings or anything like that in there. So I'll pull the rest of these off and then bring you guys back when we're trying to get the cylinder off. All the head bolts are out, and it's actually somewhat loose already, which is surprising. So I'm going to very gingerly take this pry bar. Oh yeah, look at that. So our piston is coming up with it. Just very gingerly, just kind of trying to free it up here. Not trying to bend anything or score anything. Looks to be relatively free. Just want to be able to kind of get this under there. So what I want to do now is put some pieces of wood under here to hold it up. And I'm going to take another piece of wood and just kind of lightly tap down on this piston in hopes that we can get it to slide out. I don't think it's that stuck in there. So let me find some wood and then I'll bring you guys back and we'll see if we can free that thing up. Check it out. A couple more hits. She is, oh. Almost. Make sure I don't go hitting the side of these too hard. Yeah. Success. Let's check these pistons out. We'll lose our little push rod thingamajig. Make sure that goes back where it's supposed to go. Grab a rag. Let's see. If we got any heavy damage. Well, I think I found some damage. This piston ring is in 2 pieces. Yeah, the oil ring is really stuck in there too. I don't really see like heavy scoring or anything. Kind of hard to tell. Let's see if I can get the rest of this piston ring out of here. Come on. Nice and gingerly. There we go. So we know we'll for sure need some rings. No big surprise there. The top ring looks to be in decent shape. I mean, we'll get a full set, but... So here's the inside of the cylinders. You can see there's that rust I was talking about on the top, but honestly, I don't see any gouging or any crazy wear. It's still got the kind of hone marks on it from before. I think we're going to be able to hone these out and be okay. I need to get the hone like I mentioned. I should probably keep digging deeper into this thing. Wonder what we should do next. Maybe pull this side over here. See what's behind it, see if our chain or anything is broken or crazy slack or anything like that. So let's do that. Let's set you guys up on the tripod and we'll pull this side cover off. Got all the outside bolts off. I'm just letting the oil drain out. Now there's not a ton in here, but just so that's not going to explode out all over my bench. I hope you guys are enjoying this video. This is obviously just me winging it and taking stuff apart and not really having much of a plan and, you know, trying to learn as much as I can. This is how I like to learn, is just to dive in and figure it out, and fingers crossed we'll be able to put it back together. All right, well, that's just about empty. Let's see how loose this thing is. It does have a gasket around here, and I believe this is the gasket that we have one of. Sure, our drain pan's gonna catch. And here we are. Our chain looks pretty decent. Have to look up later on what the specs are for how loose this is. I think that's what this inspection hole is for here, is to get in here and make sure your Your chain's nice and tight. There's like a little tensioner down here. A year or so ago, I watched this whole series from the guys at Lowbrow Customs, which is where I got the hardtail from Old Triumph, where this really knowledgeable guy took apart an older, I'm pretty sure it was a pre-unit, which is where the transmission's not part of it, or maybe even the late 60s, I don't remember, it's been a while now, but takes the whole thing apart and rebuilds it and vapor blasts it and everything and puts it all back together. So I'll probably need to revisit that series at some point, because I'm sure a lot of that information still applies to this guy. I don't see anything that looks heavily damaged or out of place or anything. Should be our charging system in here. Everything's, if I can keep these pistons lined up. Doesn't seem too bad. Chain's in good shape, feels nice and smooth. Yeah. I don't see any reason why we'd need to dive into this transmission or anything. I'm sure that these clutch plates are probably stuck to each other, so it might not be a bad idea for us to pull the clutch out and clean it up and stuff while we're all the way here. My Triumph, my other Triumph, has an issue with, if you let the bike sit for like 2 weeks, the clutch discs stick together. So we'll need to probably address that, but we'll do that in a separate video. Well, that's what I'm going to call it on the first video in this series. I hope you guys are stoked for this pretty unique build, I think. I don't know that I've seen anybody else build something like this. We'll see what it ends up turning into. Fingers crossed when we get our piston rings and the hone and stuff, we can put this all back together and get it to run. I know we're pretty far away from that right now, but I really want to make sure that the engine is going to be a good running candidate for us before we dive into any other parts of the bike. So that's going to be our focus. I'm going to try and get some parts on the way. If we were going like, super apocalypse style, I wouldn't order any parts, but I don't want to go that far. So I do want to go ahead and order piston rings, some new seals so that we can have like a fresh head gasket, stuff like that. The hone for the cylinders. I don't know, that's probably a good place to start. I think there's some specialty tools that I may or may not need as well. So I'll have to kind of dive into that, and well, I don't know, we'll figure it out as we go. That's the theme of this project, is no real plan, just hang out in the shop and get our hands dirty and try and get through this crazy time, having as much fun as possible. So I hope you guys follow along. If you're new to the channel, I would appreciate if you thumbs up, subscribe, hang around if you like this kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys soon.